so much. Thank you for having us here today. Thank you for having me. I am Tiffany Justice, the co-founder of Moms for Liberty. Yeah, I'm looking for Michael Bailey. Did he leave? Did he not want to hear my conversation? Did he leave? Michael and I got into it a little bit outside. We were talking before. Yeah, I asked him, why do you say trans woman? There's no such thing as a trans woman. There are women and there are men. He did not like that. I'm sorry that he didn't like that, but I actually think that, what Shanon was saying, this enabling has brought us to this moment where we are, there's no such thing as a transgender child. If there's one thing you take away today to talk about in your communities, there is no such thing as a transgender child. There are boys and there are girls, and they are beautiful just as they are, and there's no right way to be a boy or a girl. But Moms for Liberty was started in January of 2021. We started by 2 moms. We had 2 chapters. We're now in 48 states with over 325 chapters, over 140,000 members. And we've grown because moms and dads are really concerned about what we're seeing happening in our public schools. Our public schools are being used as a way to transform our country, as James said. And our children are being lumped into identity groups, and all they want to do is go and learn and grow up, and all moms and dads really want is for them to thrive and have healthy lives, and for school to help to unfold their full potential. So we're going to talk today a little bit about what's happening in America's public schools, how it started, how parents are fighting against it, and what you can do to help parents, or if you're a parent, what you can do to help to fight against this. So I'm just going to, who has a mic? You don't have a mic, you do. I'm going to pass this a little bit. And so if you don't have a mic, take this, introduce yourselves, please, and then we'll start talking about this issue a little bit.
Hi, I'm Scarlet Johnson, and I'm with Moms for Liberty in Wisconsin. I'm a chapter chair, an ambassador, and the chair of our state legislative committee, and I've been doing this work for 4 years now.
I'm Jeanette Cooper at Partners Rep Care, a co-founder of Partners Rep Care. My daughter is going to be 18 on August 20th, and I'm really proud of her. She's in the U.S. Air Force Academy now. First and foremost, I'm a woman and a mother, and I usually speak on this from a very pedestrian standpoint. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to have a degree in order to understand what sex is.
My name is January Littlejohn. I am a parent advocate for Do No Harm, and also a member of our local Moms for Liberty chapter.
My name is Kate Pfeffer. I have served for almost 20 years as the school librarian in an independent school, and served for 16 years as an endorsed Democrat in a very blue city in California.
Shanon Adcock, founder of Awake Illinois and chapter chair of DuPage Moms for Liberty. I'm a mother of 3, not a domestic terrorist, to be clear.
And I just want to say before we start how incredibly blessed and thankful I am to be able to work with the strongest, smartest women in America. And you see some of them right here. So it's really overwhelming. January, I want to start with you. I served as a school board member for 4 years in Young River County, Florida, from 2016 to 2020. And it came to my attention that there were these forms that were in schools. In fact, your daughter, without your consent or knowledge, sat with another adult and filled out 6 pages of forms in school. I want you to talk a little bit about what you've discovered, how you've discovered this got into the public schools in the free state of Florida.
Sure, and thank you for that question. So my daughter was socially transitioned at her local middle school where I happened to be volunteer of the year. So if it can happen to my family, it can happen to anyone. And it wasn't just one adult she was sat down with at the age of 13, it was 3 adults. So think about that power differential. But what I did was a deep dive into this issue. And what I saw was that there were activist organizations, and this blueprint that I'm going to tell you didn't just happen in Florida. It was happening everywhere, and people just were not blowing the whistle yet. So this was the height of COVID in 2020. But to learn how this got into the schools, we have to go back to 2016. And our local activist organization called Equality Florida, but it's very similar to human rights campaign, GLAAD, any of these, gender spectrum, they're all related, and they all share the same goal. which has fundamentally changed the culture of schools and to separate the child from their parent. And so what I saw was Equality Florida had a safe schools department. And starting in 2016, they had gone into public schools under the guise of anti-bullying and non-discrimination policies. And they had what was called a Safe Schools Equality Index. It was a checklist. And they went around to schools asking them, how best are you protecting your LGBTQ students? And some of the questions that they would ask the schools are, do you have a GSA club? Do you have trans visibility where you celebrate LGBTQ holidays? Do you have gender support plans, which are the social transition plans that they completed with my daughter? Do you have LGBTQ guides? And this is really important because these guides, they varied in pages from 38 to 130. But we found these guides in all over Florida schools. And in these guides, there was an intentional narrative being pushed. Number one, that if you did not affirm children in these trans identities, they were going to kill themselves. That was over and over spouted in this guide. And number two, if you tell a parent about a child's transgender identity, you are putting them at risk of abuse or could even make them homeless. And so it's really important to understand why they called them guides and not policies, because to be a policy, you have to go through school board approval. A guide does not. However, this was a de facto guide, policy treated just like a real policy where there were consequences if teachers did not adhere to these secretive transitions that were occurring behind the backs of parents.
The guides were in a high school district and they had never come before us as a school board member. So through your student services department, that's normally how a lot of this is coming in. And so if you're looking to do public records request, that's a good place to start. Jeanette, in school, I think the majority of American parents still think that school should be teaching kids how to read, write, do math, learn science, learn history, all history. I think, and I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation, that parents might think that their child's going to be taught that they might have been born in their own body would be as offensive as perhaps teaching children that 2 + 2 = 5. How did we get to this place where schools have taken on this issue?
There's a couple of ways that we got here. We didn't have enough people like January and other parents saying no. I think people fear consequences, as Sean Theory said. They really do fear what will happen to them. When people say to me, for example, I noted that my daughter's 18. I haven't actually seen her in 5 years because I acquiesced to the family court system and completely lost all custody and real communication with her because I would not say that she was not a girl. I just simply said no. I lost all of my friends. I was on the school board at my local school. I can't lose my job. I'm a landlady. You lose tons of things, and I'm still alive. I'm so much happier, and I feel so much better being around people who actually live their values than I did before. So people who are scared to say no are scared that what? They're going to become me and have my fantastic life where I'm not fearful of anything? I wish they would say no. But really, I think there's a couple different purposes of school. Although I'm not a title believer, I am in fact getting my PhD at DePaul University and in education. That's really my background. I want to get that so I can tell people to leave the prison that is schooling. I don't really believe in the concept of schooling very much anymore. So school, as we learn in our PhD, people believe that there might be one function or another function, and generally this is the discontent that happens within schools, and this is the fight that we're having today. Are schools supposed to conserve our current culture and replicate it so it continues, or is school kind of a factory to change our culture? That is a constant debate, has always been true, and is still happening today, and we continuously fight that.
Now, my background is in homeschooling. We won at homeschooling, and we will win this today. Because we have liberals and conservatives, both have some things that they wish to conserve, have some things that they wish to liberate ourselves from. All of that is within one person. Nobody is strictly conservative or strictly liberal. We all have both of those things, and it is a constant tension of pushing and pulling. But on this particular issue of gender ideology, we will win because we are coming together.
That's right.
That's how we won homeschooling, and we will win this today when people say, no, you're not going to do this. And somebody says, well, you can't say no. Yes, I can. I didn't sign the form that said my daughter could take aspirin at school. I said, where's the checkbox that says no? Where is it? Well, I don't know. Nobody's ever said no. Well, I'm not signing this. People have to say no.
So, Kate, you've worked in schools for quite some time. James talked about Mal. One of the things that people don't know is that Mal actually shut the schools down for 2 years and did some re-education of the teachers. We call that professional development today at the American public schools. Right? So, Kate, what is the information that teachers are getting from administrators, and we're going to talk about the federal government in a second, but if you're a teacher in a school and you really don't know much about this and your administrators are doing some professional development with you, what does that look like?
Thank you, Tiffany. I had my first professional development around trans and gender issues in 2016. And of course, there had been a national conversation kind of bubbling in the background. And when I look back in the policy, it was coming into the state much earlier than that. In California, we actually had a triggering event, which was that in a Southern California school district, a young middle school, very gender nonconforming boy was murdered at school by another boy. And it's a very complex story, very sad story. And as teachers particularly, because there were teachers on scene when this happened, as they were trying to grapple with it, of course, you try to simplify it. And so as professional development came in, it was very superficial. Some things that didn't, as I was first hearing it, things didn't make sense. But we thought as teachers that we would be seeing it the way you would see this very gender nonconforming boy, which is maybe a student like that would come in to your school maybe once every 10 or 15 years. And it was about anti-bullying, it was about being kind, and it was about being inclusive. And we just didn't, at first we were not paying attention, I would say. And I think many parents and teachers are still at that level where they think it is just about accommodating individual students, where there's something incoherent about them, rather than understanding that the culture has changed and what they're teaching about gender has changed so much that instead for some students it's kind of a rational response, I think, as James might say, to the current culture. And so I think that there is a lot of confusion, and there with teachers, with parents, and that they can often be really blindsided because many still think that this is something where they would have noticed it in their young child. They're still not being taught that it's something that just can happen at adolescent level. And so until it happens in their own family, they don't understand what's being taught at school. So
Shanon, you have been doxxed, you've been canceled, you've been targeted.
Haven't been canceled.
Oh, you haven't been canceled, I'm sorry. There's been attempts to cancel Shanon. That is not happening, I apologize.
Uncancelable.
Yes, excellent. Thank you for that. You're right. But I mean, I've watched you because you are kind of in the thick of in this blue state of Illinois and the teachers union here. So incredibly powerful. And Shanon was talking about the teachers union who have pushed this ideology so much all over the country. We have Kamala Harris now and Tim Walz, who is possibly the most anti-parent, radical candidate that we could have possibly had as a vice presidential pick. In fact, I just want to share, there was a teacher in Florida who was under investigation by the DOE who said that when your child goes into her classroom, that you're a parental rights stop at the classroom door. And Tim Walz actually came out and said, please come to Minnesota. We'd love to have you teaching here. That's how anti-parent this man is. So let's talk about, like, in a blue state like Illinois, I know it's hard to stand up. What has it been like for you as a parent?
Well, thank you, Tiffany, for your leadership nationally, and thank you again to Carrie and Jen Speck for this event. So I think to answer your question, I have to first start by saying, be hopeful and be encouraged. This can feel very big and it can feel very heavy, but as much as the forces that you mentioned are powerful at the surface, we, the people, are actually more powerful. We, the parents, have more power than we allow society in this time to probably grant us. So I have stood up to it. I was called in 2021 a racist white supremacist for being against critical race theory and race hustling in the classroom. So I started Awake Illinois 2 days after losing that school board race. I'm now 3 years later sitting next to Rev. Sean Theory, right? A Democrat, a Black Democrat from Texas. And if there was such a thing as woke holy water, it would be boiling right now because we are sitting next together, coming together for children and protecting them. And so they want us to be divided. They want us to cancel ourselves. They want us to stop talking. But good things can happen. I think one of the biggest victories here in Illinois that we can reference is that House Bill 4876 was filed by Rep. Stava Murray, who's a radical, lunatic, woke, white, progressive woman. She is the epitome of evil. And she thinks that children should be mutilated and sterilized. And here we are in 2024, literally having to come together to protect children from this. And we actually, through a robust effort with people elevating their voices, sending her emails, telling one another as neighbors, do you know about this bill? A lot of people woke up. And it didn't matter if they were Democrat, Republican, never voted in their lives, hate politics. They realized policy is affecting our children if we don't get involved. So I say to people, talk politically to me, not dirty, because we have to be comfortable talking about religion, politics, and sex. There is a war on all three because we stopped talking. So when you talk and you gather and you have peaceful assembly and you use a First Amendment right to free speech or petition your policymakers, you can stop this evil. And I will say, the weakness of evil is that it always underestimates the good. That's right, it did. Always. This is good what's happening right here. Share all of the resources you hear, all of the people you see here. Follow them on social media. Evangelize the truth because it cannot be canceled. And neither can I. And neither can you. Or you. Yes. Amen. Amen.
All right, we're going to move to Scarlet next because Scarlet is a warrior, true warrior in Wisconsin. And it's interesting because as you travel around the United States, people will say, well, this isn't happening here. Like, this isn't happening in Wisconsin, is it? Oh, it is. This isn't happening in Kansas, is it? Oh, no, it is, right? And so Wisconsin has been a target state for the left and pushing this ideology. And we recently had a win. I'm gonna let you to talk about it because Moms for Liberty was part of a federal lawsuit. We just got a preliminary injunction, and so I'm going to give you the microphone, Scarlett, and I want you to tell people about how, in a very real way, right now, around the new regulations of Title IX and the pushing of gender ideology into schools, how we've been given this amazing blessing to fight back.
Hi. I like to say we are, my dad is Marine. We are the U.S. Marine Corps of this movement. We're the infantry, we're the devil dogs. We go in and we're reporting back. And I would say I have good news. I have great news. We had a huge win for the state of Wisconsin and for states all over this country. We in Wisconsin thought we didn't have a prayer when it came to the impending Title IX implementation that was going to start just August 1st. And it was pretty depressing. And then on July 2nd, and I'm going to use my iPad here because this is a pending case, so I want to be correcting my language. If you don't know, it's a 1,500-page rewrite, a redefinition of Title IX. And it replaces the definition of sex with a new one. It's no longer male and female. It's based on gender identity and gender-based sex characteristics or stereotypes. You know, something that can change like the weather in Wisconsin. And on July 2nd, the federal court, the 10th Circuit, stopped Biden-Harris's Department of Education's implementation and enforcement of the 2024 Title IX rewrite in schools attended by the children of members of Moms for Liberty. We also had 4 plaintiffs that put their names on this and that's a big deal. Their kids right now are facing ramifications because they did that. We also were aligned with the Young America Foundation, head by Scott Walker, former governor, and the Female Athletics Association, I think. But so that was huge. But then it got better, because on July 19th, after the Department of Education tried to limit this ruling on July 2nd, the judge extended this order to include all current and future members of Moms for Liberty, meaning that right now, to this day, if you sign up as a member for Moms for Liberty, you have a child in a public school, that school is protected, and the Department of Education cannot force the school to adopt the Title IX changes. In Wisconsin, we use Neola Policy 2264. I think Illinois also uses Neola. They do use the language of sex harassment and non-discrimination. Right now, what I'm dealing with, there are several different attempts that they're taking to continually pass this, even when there are members of Moms for Liberty in the district. Sometimes 4, 5 times they keep bringing it up, putting it on the agenda. And they are even removing any mention of Title IX in order to fool school board members into thinking this is just a simple sex harassment, non-discrimination policy. They are saying, oh, this has nothing to do with athletics or bathrooms. And we all know that that was not the case. And I just, another win, the University of Wisconsin, based upon this case, suspended the permanent and emergency rulemaking regarding Title IX across all UW systems until this case is fully litigated. So none of the UW systems are going to implement this Title IX. And in Wisconsin, I just told them we have a total of 443 schools protected now by this case because of Moms for Liberty. And there are a lot more because we still, every day, we have more members signing up. And one last big win, school board members that used to run from our endorsement, say, please don't endorse me, are now calling me off the hook, and all of our chapter chairs, which are growing. We have so many members applying to be chapter chairs. It's difficult right now for poor Pat, and it's a good problem. It's a good problem. It's a good problem that we are vetting in more chapters. There are thousands, tens of thousands of more members in Wisconsin, and we're growing leaps and bounds, and school board members are now calling me. It used to be me chasing them. They're chasing me now, asking for help, asking for guidance. I just yesterday had a 2-hour conversation with a board member who said he couldn't sleep at night. He passed Title IX. He's the president. Can I help him? He wants to rewind it. We're working with him. And this issue, it's not, I'm a conservative, my dad raised me quoting Ronald Reagan. But this is beyond all of that. This is about what's normal and sane versus what's crazy. And we should not care about the opinions of crazy people. They don't like me, and I really don't like them too much either, so that's okay.
I just want to mention we were represented by Southeastern Legal Foundation. Alliance Defending Freedom was also part of the lawsuit representing female advocates united. If you are looking for somewhere to donate money, the public interest law firms in America right now are so incredibly important. We are up into I would imagine it's probably over $250,000 that this Southeastern Legal has probably put into this case. I'm just estimating, but it costs an enormous amount of money to bring these lawsuits. The lawsuits are incredibly important. It's going to be how we stop a lot of this. And so, how we started with $500 at Moms for Liberty. $500 in a back bedroom. We made some T-shirts that said we do not co-parent with the government, and so we would never have the money to be able to do that. So the public interest law firms are incredibly important. I want to open up this to conversation now, so feel free to pass the microphone between all of you. One of the things I think is the hardest as a parent when you start fighting some of this is the fact that you're just this awful mean person, like you don't have any compassion. And I watch moms who go into, and dads who go into schools and work in schools and volunteer. You're oftentimes not even working with your own child. You're working with other people's kids when you go and volunteer. And so nothing that we do is coming from hate or anger. It's concern for the future of our kids and our country. But being labeled as someone who, don't you want every kid to feel valued, Shannon, right, Kate? Don't you want every child to feel included? So how can we as moms talk about this issue in a kind and compassionate way in order to help people to understand why we are so incredibly concerned? Is there anyone that wants to take this first?
Do you want me to go first?
I just want to say one thing from I don't know, was I on the left? Maybe. The topic of consent that seems to be popular with us liberals, I'm not sure how we forgot that and started to include men and women's prisons, boys and girls' locker rooms, and all of those other things. So I think kind of the gamut of society needs to figure out what they think about consent and what they think about boundaries and reconcile all of that. Because that's a serious issue when it comes to spaces. I don't have to include everybody. There's no necessity for me to include crazy people at my dinner table.
That's right.
I don't have to do that. I can say no. And I think that's a reasonable expectation for parents to say in schools, for people to say in public, to say, no, I'm sorry, I don't actually want your help. I don't actually want you near me. And that's my choice. I'm not responsible for being a psychologist to any member of the public. I'm not responsible for being your psychiatrist, your social worker. I'm responsible for being a member of the public, a student in a classroom. I don't want to participate in the pronoun game. My mom says I don't have to do that. I'm not going to do that. You should probably talk to her.
So Alvin Louis talks about this a lot, and I know he's going to be on the panel later, but when it comes to this issue, language has been manipulated and hijacked. Okay. And as a parent who has experienced this firsthand with our daughter, and now she's on the other side of confusion, I can tell you it is not kind or compassionate to lie to a child. It is not kind or compassionate to affirm a child's self-hate for her body. It is not kind or compassionate to cut the breast off of children as young as 12 years old. And it's certainly not kind or compassionate to destroy their fertility and their future sexual functioning. We have got to get past this notion that we need to be liked by everyone. That is not important. And if our children are not worth fighting for, what is? We are fighting for truth. We are fighting for reality, and we have the momentum on our side. What we need right now is courage.
Yes. First. Amen. Thank you for that. I feel like I'm at like a Baptist revival a little bit. I'll be like jumping up. So I agree with January, and I think that we are all in this room probably pretty pugnacious people, pretty gritty. And I don't think that in order to get the masses on board, we can expect them to advocate in the same pugnacious manner as maybe me for Tiffany or Scarlet, right? We're not asking you to do that. But the question I pose to parents is, what comes to a teacher's mind, or a camp counselor's mind, a youth pastor's mind, when they see your child's name on a roster? Do they know you? What comes to their mind? Because whether we like it or not as parents in 2024 or thousands of years ago, whoever is entrusted with children is going to rank children, if they're a predator, as easy to hard. So you have to be standing in the gap boldly from your children's very, very young age. And come what may to anybody who judges you for that, this is your job. You have a finite window to be the parent and to be a good one. So I'm a big movie fan. I don't know if any of you know Pulp Fiction, where the wolf in his tuxedo, picture him in his tuxedo, he says, you even think about hurting me in your dreams, you better wake up and apologize. That's me with my children. You even think about it, you better wake up and apologize. And look, I've sued Governor Pritzker, I sued my school district over violations of due process rights. My reputation precedes me. But when your children are on a class roster, what comes to the teacher's mind? Do they know that you are a parent who is paying attention, who has filed the opt-out forms and said, I know my parental rights, you will not hold secrets between my child and you.
on sex or sexuality or prescription drugs or politics or anything, right? So how easily would they rate your child from easy to hard in terms of predation? And sometimes teachers, I think, nobly think that every parent is bad and a bigot and abusive. And that's just because we're in this time and culture where parents are painted as bigots. That's wrong. And you can change the course by saying, I am an involved parent. I know my rights and I will work with you. I am not a bigot, but I love my children. And this is my job and it is paramount. Never apologize for that, ever.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll just jump in on that. I want to say, because we've been talking a lot about public schools, obviously I work in independent schools, private schools, this is endemic, and I want to be cautious about homeschools as well. I volunteer with parents. Many homeschool groups are completely captured by this.
That's right.
And so there is no solution individually. This really has to be a societal-wide change. And I would like to say, because I know so many parents that, again, not warriors, cautious, concerned about their standing in their community, concerned about their children's relationships, that sometimes it's as simple as just, I know my kid, I know this is how I opt out, you figure out how to opt out. States like California make it hard to opt out. They try to separate the sex education from gender education. But the reality is that the curriculum the curricula are all mixed together. And so you really can, if you're proactive, you can opt out. And I would say that this is a role for GenSpect in the future. They have started putting together like regional laws and describing. There's a lot more to say. Places to put links together to make it easier for parents to figure out, this is where I live, this is how I access my rights in my state. I think that's a really important for the future.
This is a culture where we didn't start. We didn't want to have we just wanted to live our lives and raise our kids and be happy. And I was once volunteer of the year, and I was once asked to be on the school board, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I have young kids, so this came to us. They declared war on our kids. It's a war against normalcy. And they're trying to take my most precious of my children and my grandchildren and my nieces and my nephews. And I'll tell you what, you do not want to be between me and my kids. That is a place that you don't want to be. I will fight for my kids till hell freezes over, and when hell freezes over, I'm going to fight on the ice. But we also need, and there's different ways of fighting. Maybe you don't want to be out front. So many of our members of Moms for Liberty, IT experts help me with Excel spreadsheets. Folks that are really good at organizing and emailing, folks that are really great, dealing with legislative and bills and all of that. So there are so many different ways you can be a part of this. And if you're shy, and we help write speeches for a school board, all of that. There's all these different ways that you can be involved. But I hope that everyone is inspired to get more involved and talk about it and get others more involved, because this is how we win. It took them how many years to march through the institutions, James? Now we've got to reverse, and we've got to march right back through and reclaim all of them. We are building a city we may not live to see, but it's still worth building.
Excellent, thank you. There's something called the Pupil Protection Rights Amendment. Was anyone ever heard of that before? Mm-hmm. Anybody in this room thought of? So in 1984, the Department of Education went to 7 different cities across the United States of America because they were putting together regulations for the Pupil Protection Rights Amendment that had been passed in 2 different phases, 1974 and 1978. There were no regulations that had come to be. And what that amendment says, what that law says, is that, first of all, you have access to all curriculum that your children are shown in school. The school has to show you anything that they are presenting to your children, and schools are fighting against us on that right now. The other thing it says is that your children can't be questioned and surveyed about different issues like political affiliation, sexual orientation. James, what was the phrase that you said about that? It's a problem looking.
it's a conclusion looking for, right. So the schools are using surveys and data mining our children for lots of different reasons, but they're using surveys in the schools in order to be able to justify the interventions that they're doing. When you look at the Department of Education now, they're talking a lot about how they want to put mental health supports into schools. And so we want to take questions. So in about 5 minutes, we're going to take questions, but I just want to talk a little bit about, the role of the school, especially when it comes to mental health, and the social emotional learning that's happening. If someone wants to speak to that, because mental health care is medical care. And parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. That's not a right the government gives you. It's not a right that they can take away, certainly not easily. And you don't have the right to abuse your kids. You can't cut off their healthy body parts, for example. Shanon, thank you for that. If your kid wanted to be a pirate and said, I want to be a pirate, would they poke out their eye and cut off their foot and give them a peg leg and an eye patch? Of course not. Use that. Talk about that issue with people. But not only do you have the right, you have a responsibility. That's right. And a duty to raise your children. If you're a believer, then you believe that God has given you that responsibility and bestowed that on you in a very unique way, that He does not give that to in any other situation. So these interventions that are happening in the schools in the name of mental health, in the name of social emotional learning, are so incredibly damaging. How pervasive is it? Where is it happening? How is it happening in the schools? And then any advice or help about it. And we'll hear from some other people who are going to talk about action steps, but how to try to safeguard your children from some of those interventions.
I usually try to give the macro view. So the macro view is your children are scared of people who they are putting trust in. And so they're doing the thing that will cause them and everybody else the least distress. I have done that in my life. That was not very beneficial. So courage is the thing that gets us through most of the things that are happening in schools in general. If kids are feeling a distress and a discomfort and losing trust in parents, that's a problem. They're losing trust in teachers, that's a problem. This loss of trust in general around society is a massive problem, but children certainly are the most vulnerable. The power that we have, getting more to your question, the power that we still have is fear. We are a litigious society. Suing people works. That's how it's going to work for schools because generally they're poor. So you sue them, they change their policies. That's how it all happens. This isn't rocket science. So we will continue to sue those schools and we will win, just like, again, we won in homeschooling. But we're sitting in a very small group, and there's a bunch of people who aren't scared to have giant rallies outside. But the way that when you see your kid's name on the roster, I remember my name on the roster, and my teachers were scared of my mother. Like, your mom's in this school. What's going on? They were so scared of what my mom was going to do. And that's great because they changed their behavior on fear alone. There didn't have to be a policy change. Because my mom was a scary person in the school. There was no policy that was going to override the fear that teachers had of, I don't know what my mom had inside of her, but I want to be that person. I think we are those people that just by talking, that yes, the school is a little bit fearful, and yes, they will change their policies if we keep pushing them.
Good. As an employee, I actually took legal advice at one point because they were pushing so hard on pronouns. And also starting to tell us that, for example, if we had a student that identified as a he, she, they, that we needed to, in the same paragraph of speaking, rotate through their pronouns.
Wow.
And
Like you have nothing else to do.
it was, I was really worried, like, because you're at the limit of your neurology at that point. So I got advice from a lawyer who said, who's very supportive of these things, very pronoun positive, all those things. But she said, well, actually, your employer can't force you to hide or to reveal a gender identity. So you don't have to share pronouns, but why wouldn't you? And of course, I then gave her some reasons why. But I think that in some cases, in terms of social emotional learning and mental health issues, that the schools are they're skating on thin ice. So for example, if you keep asking a kid their pronouns again and again. It places a stress on them that I could see parents litigating ultimately around that, because you're trying to force them to reveal their gender identity. Same like you're trying to force them to reveal their sexual orientation. But, they're doing trainings that are not evidence-based on implicit bias, on trigger warnings, on microaggressions, where you have like the guy who originally came up with the term microaggressions coming out and saying, I intended this to be a way of training people that the things they say may have inadvertent consequences, not that there was a school full of victims that needed to look at themselves that way. And so with the best of intentions, I do give grace for that. It's pervasive and it's harming, and you need to know what's going on. Of course, Abigail Schreier's just written about this, so it's a good way to.
That's right. Yeah.
So bad therapy, I recommend.
Shannon, did you? So as a mental health professional, you have to understand that the mental health field has been weaponized when it comes to this issue. And this overemphasis we are seeing on our children's mental health, this idea that they can't be taught unless they feel quote unquote safe. The whole notion, when you start bringing social emotional learning and things into this, and just like Abigail Schreier talks about, whose values are you then placing on that child? Do they align with yours? And the last thing that I'll say about this is it's really important to understand that even in red states like Florida, yes, we have great laws. We still have activist counselors and teachers in our schools. Yeah. The faucet of gender ideology is free-flowing into our institutions, our universities, and our schools, even if it's through GSA clubs or the students themselves. 3 other children had started to identify as transgender before my daughter picked up on the idea that she may too not be a girl. So we really need to get into the schools, know what's being taught, stand up for your parental rights, and if they do not recognize you as the ultimate decision maker for your child, pull your child from that school. But please hear what Kate is saying. I hear from parents every week whose children have fallen prey to this trans identity. Many of them are homeschooling, they're in private schools, they're in public schools. This has infected our entire society. The only way is to fully inoculate your children from this ideology.
Yes. Shannon, do you have something? Go quickly, yeah. So for anybody who's more analytical, you ask the question, like, why are they doing this, right? Like, why are they doing social emotional learning? Why are they putting all of these mental health programs into schools? The reason is because there's a lot of money attached to that. So if a school can get more money by implementing these programs, they're going to do it. So follow the money applies here. And what I've learned is if you submit opt-out forms, and I don't know if you already know where to find them, our organization has the triplicate form, one click and you get it, awakeil.com/forms. It's 2 forms from Courage is a Habit and 1 from Liberty Counsel. It can be used in any state. But find a form and put it on record. And the reason I tell you that is not just to be the barrier that I mentioned earlier, but because I have found that the conversations you will have with children, with anyone entrusted with your children, is that most people do agree on respecting your parental rights, but they need to know that you have asserted those rights. And a lot of parents are teachers themselves. They don't want their children exposed to this. The activists do. So you have to be the barrier, because even one activist who wants to prey on children is one too many. But you will find common ground with a lot more people than you probably realize. So put those parental rights on record, and you will find there is an underground and even public K-12 education where teachers and staffers are saying, totally agree with you. 100%. Where did you get those forms? I want those for my kids. So this is what's going to turn the tide, but be hopeful that you will find more allies as you speak truth and evangelize it than you might think. So to say.
And if you would like to have more information on social emotional learning and how to stop it, momsforliberty.org. If you don't have a chapter in your county, start one, because we are successful at rooting this out. We're well-trained investigative. We're like, we're kind of like PIs. We can find this stuff, and we have spent countless hours on our resources. We have our new resource page. It's incredible. And if you knew how many people across this country were contributing to the resources that we have at momsforliberty.org, it'd blow your mind. And then we get school board members elected, and guess what? We are successful in stopping the implementation of SVL and even rooting it out because we know what to look for. A lot of people don't. We do. momsfully.org.
Thank you so much. That was awesome, Hannah. You want to take questions? Yeah. I want to say, but like, just as we close out for a second, I was listening. Is it Dr. Bailey? Is that what he goes by? Dr.
Mike.
Call him Mike. I'm sorry that Mike's not here. I am. But, he was talking about this issue. Is it similar to other issues? We have the weight of the federal government pushing this into America's public schools. Joe Biden, within the first, I want to say 15 days, it was probably less than that, was very clear that they were going to be redefining sex to include gender identity and sexual orientation. This is an agenda that is being pushed. Our children are being, we didn't even talk about the books in the schools. I'm still wondering why kids who are gay need porn in schools. What more? I just don't understand this idea of sexualizing children. The least interesting thing about a child should be their sexual orientation, for goodness sakes. Protects their innocence, allow them to grow up. They believe in Santa. If you tell them they were born in the wrong body, they're going to believe you. What right do you have to tell that to a 5-year-old to make them question something so fundamental about their lives? But it's meant to destabilize your children. But again, the weight of the entire federal government. So the decisions that you're making as a voter are important. And, politics matter because policies matter because people matter. And Allie Beth Stuckey said that at an event that we held. And there were a lot of Americans that during COVID woke up and they've said, my goodness, there are all of these policies that are hurting my kids. How did this happen? Right? And then they realized, politics. And then we saw that there were a bunch of idiots who were making policies in America. And so why not you? If you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, I can't run for office. That's not what I do. That's somebody. No, it's your turn now. It's time to stand up and take our country back because we are losing our country and it is intentional. And the Kamala Harris comment was shared. Is it Tracy that came up to me and told me about Maya Harris? Kamala's
Casey.
Casey. I'm sorry, Casey. My eyes, I'm getting old, so my eyes. But I went and said to James, it's so important to understand that this really is a Marxist communist movement in our country to drive a wedge between the parent and the child and to change the future of America. And it is our job to safeguard our freedom and our liberty and to use our vote and our voice. You cannot stay home. You need to vote. You need to tell your friends to vote. You need to go out and you need to get people registered to vote. And you need to make sure they understand what is at stake. The last thing, we wrote a letter to American parents. Tina and I, the co-founder of Moms for Liberty. It's on our website in the news section. It's well cited to show the different parental rights violations of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, both in their respective states, and then Kamala Harris as vice president. This is not something that we're making up. It is incredibly important. I don't care what party they belong to. They are anti-parent and anti-American, and we need to tell other parents that they need to vote like their children's future depends on it because it does.
Thank you, ladies. So I think we have time for a few questions.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm a kind of a government nerd, policy nerd, but I want to ask about metaphysics, okay? And what do I mean by that? Jeanette, you talked about how this movement transformed you. You found yourself and found a better self, a higher self. That's what I discovered from all of you. I was in economics, right? Where'd all the money go, right? But where did our culture go? Where did human beings go? What does it mean to be a human being? So it seems like you all have discovered a new sense of self. You've discovered community. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's actually the great positive once you walk through the fear. I'm more interested in that than policy right now.
Who knew we were going to make so many new friends in our 40s? Truly.
Yeah.
So the recentering of self to some fundamental values, I think has been the most positive thing ever. I mean, it seems kind of crazy to think that I actively tried to think about my values and then put those into action. Seems kind of basic, but there's no class that we ever took in school to teach us to do that. We should have learned it at home. Our children are actually being so confused about what their values are because there's this conflict between schools and parents and all of that. It's confusing to children. But what is not confusing is material reality. I am not a believer, never been a believer. I still believe the concept of evolution and material reality will get us out of this. If you ask a child what sex a person is, they actually know.
Yeah.
Even though they've been told something that is completely false, they will tell you, Mom, it's actually a man. I mean, when we did the Save Women's Sports in front of the NCAA thing, where William Thomas beat those girls, it was so awful. But you know what we said on that bullhorn? Everybody knows. Everybody knows. And everybody knows.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't a recentering of self, but I love Jeanette. It was a recentering of God and what his plan was for me and our family. And I'm so grateful to be sitting next to people like Jeanette, who we may not have a lot in common in terms of our belief system, but this is a unifying issue. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, because never in my life did I believe that I would be sitting next to feminists and atheists and Christians and Jewish people, and we all have one common goal, and that is to protect and safeguard the innocence of children and ensure they grow into adulthood with their bodies whole and intact.
I was really lucky because I still remember being in a book club, all liberal women, and then recognizing that actually we all have the same opinion about gender and what was being taught and what our children were being taught. And so I had the understanding right away that there was a different discourse going on behind the scenes than in front of the mic. And that politicians were saying and doing and pushing things, and professional development was going in a different direction than what was going on behind the scenes and what people really believed. Going through this as a heterodox person in a very liberal community, man, it teaches you who you had your back, who your friends are, who your family really are, and it is powerful.
Yeah.
I have made all sorts of new friends. There is community out there, but I know that if you're alone in this at first, then it doesn't feel like that. There are lots of ways that parents and other people who believe gender critical in general, or just gender questioning in a different sort of way, that there are communities out there. There are, writers, there are organizations, and people, really, there's a way to connect. So it can be powerful to do that, and I hope that people who are listening to this who feel alone, that they reach out to whatever organization makes the most sense to them, for sure.
Yeah. I think there was another question.
I appreciate the question, because I think that people who are pugnacious and gritty are often dismissed as callous and uncaring. And as much as you can tell I love my children, and I ran up on the hill for children, I reached a point of critical mass where I knew my kids were going to be okay, but this became about making sure I can empower other families and children to be protected. So this is a greater calling, and I think that if we in America openly practice our Judeo-Christian beliefs, we will grow in community exponentially very quickly. That's what I found. And running up on the hill in 2020 was very difficult. I thought my voice would be drowned out. I thought that I would have been outnumbered, or excuse me, that there would have been so many numbers that the opposition would have been outnumbered, and that wasn't the case. But now it's a lot easier to come onto the hill. There's such a movement happening, and you do find friendship in it, as Tiffany said. I think it's very unusual for women to find friendship at this age so organically, but we come together on shared values for children. And so keep living your life in your Judeo-Christian belief system. Own it and practice it, and then the policy will follow. The culture will react to the Judeo-Christian beliefs of this country. I firmly believe that. But I'm not here to get accolades from even people who believe in my value system. I'm waiting to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, in my time.
I'm actually an introvert, and I never voted in a school board election before. The first time I went to speak before my school board, I threw up and I was shaking. I almost started to cry when I had to door knock to recall 4 school board members, which we successfully did. I was scared every single time. I still get nervous. If you saw me, I was sitting there going through my notes. I still get nervous every time I speak publicly, and it takes me a little while to warm up. I never thought that I would have an opportunity to be brave. I thought I was just a mom, just in my minivan taking care of my kids, and I never envisioned that I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And now I'm forever changed, and I'll never change back. And there's something about it, like you think in your mind ways that you're going to be brave, or you plan it out, or your parents teach you how to be brave, but you never know you really are until the moment comes. And COVID was the moment. And when I proved to myself that I could be brave for my kids, it's a life-changing experience. And there's all different ways to be brave. And just all of you, everyone here, I challenge yourself, be brave, because you'll never go back. You will always be happy with your decision. And you, in your small way, are a hero. And that's unbelievable. And Ari, I just wanted to say, do no harm. He helped me when I needed help with legislation passed, and we passed every single bill. And as did January, as did Jeanette, as did Shanon, and Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty in Wisconsin, Carrie with FAIR. So you have all been mentors and helpful to me when we've talked till like 2 a.m. Thank you to everyone here. You've all been wonderful, and all your work has helped me and helped my state and helped countless children.
The mission statement of Moms for Liberty is to unify, educate, and empower parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. So you unify people, you bring them together, and it helps to give them courage. And then you educate them on the issues so they feel that they can engage in a meaningful way with people and have conversations, and they feel empowered. And then change happens. The media has tried to do a very good job of trying to make Moms for Liberty untouchable. They wanted to make us racists, white supremacists, transphobes, bigots, whatever they wanted to say about us. It's largely people that had never been that political before. It's not a bunch of diehard Republicans. It's people that are coming together in order to fight for our children. And so I'll close on this note. Your children are watching you. I ran for school board in 2016. I am by nature a disruptor. I ask questions. Why are we doing it this way? This doesn't really make sense. I anger people all the time in that role as a school board member because I asked a lot of questions. And it was very, very hard. I will not lie. But my children are watching me. I travel right now about 2 weeks a month all over the United States speaking and working with Moms for Liberty chapters, and it's hard. But my children are watching me, and right now in this moment in our country, any step you are taking to be brave, you are raising the next generation of patriots in America. This fight does not stop with us. There is not some winning moment where we beat this back. They are still coming for the kids. It is going to be another issue. The issue is never the issue, as James says. The issue is always the revolution. And so just know that your children are watching you. They are going to learn to be brave. They are going to learn how to love, how to serve with honor. And the steps that you take right now to advocate, to be an activist, to save our country, will affect your children for the rest of their lives in ways that you may not even possibly be able to imagine right now. So thank you to Jen Specht for embracing Moms for Liberty and us and me, and not believing the nonsense and the lies, and giving us an opportunity to bring people together.
Thank you.
I want to say something about Tiffany. I lost a school board election, second one. I was on the couch, couldn't get off the couch for a couple of days thinking, oh my God. She recruited me. I talked to her and said, there's a plan for you, Scarlet. There's something left for you to do. And so thank you, Tiffany, for believing in me, for getting me to not feel sorry for myself, and to realize that God had another plan. And so I appreciate all the work that you do for Moms for Liberty. And thank you to James Lindsay, King of the Moms.
Thank you so much. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much.